Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Good to see you. Hey, Facebook. I believe Facebook Live just kicked in. Yeah, good to see you guys. Totally forgot that there was these town halls tonight. I figured it made sense to watch it for those of you who have better things to do on your Thursday night, like getting a root canal, kicking rocks, folding clothes, emptying a litter box, volunteering to empty your neighbor's litter box, any of those things. Would be probably a better use of your time than watching the competing Biden and Trump town halls. What this is going to be kind of interesting, right? Because they're both on at the same time. So what I have here with my Zoom recording is I have just two windows. One of them obviously has the YouTube live stream for ABC's town hall with Joe Biden. The other one has the YouTube live stream for NBC's town hall with Donald Trump. I don't know how much I'm going to flip back and forth between these two, and I'm just going to kind of give you some rationale of what I'm looking for here tonight, what I expect, and just a few of the stories that they probably won't talk about but ought to. So first of all, as of me pressing record here and hitting live, so it's about 5:52, Twitter has been down, which is kind of a big deal. They're experiencing big problems, and anyone that has been keeping up with what's been going on Twitter for the last 24 hours, it's actually a huge story. Basically, long story short, there was Hunter Biden left his laptop at a computer repair place. It'd been there for a while. The owner turned over the laptop to the FBI, but also made copies of the hard drive, gave one to Rudy Giuliani for some reason, and another one to the New York Post. Anyway, the New York Post released an article about here are some emails that show that Joe Biden did indeed meet with a Ukrainian oligarch or a businessman, even though he said he didn't. Anyway, but that's a big story, right? That should be a huge story. Twitter blocked links to that story on like URL links. So if you tried to tweet out that New York Post story, it blocked your account. All these people like Kayleigh McEnany, for example, had their accounts temporarily suspended. And so the last 24 hours has been a total crap storm of Twitter, getting all this blowback, rightfully so, for censoring this story. I mean, before it was even, we had any information about it, they were just, they were blocking it, which is clear no matter what anyone tells you about undercover efforts from Russia, or, on behalf of Donald Trump, or from Iran and China on behalf of Joe Biden. I don't think we're going to run into something as clear as what Twitter and actually Facebook also did with this New York Post story about Hunter Biden. It is absolutely insane and unprecedented. So Twitter's down. That story has been disappeared by the legacy news network. So that's CNN didn't run anything about it, for example. I don't believe NBC did either. And so that's something they should talk about. It says, watch out, Facebook may shut you down. I don't have enough of a following for them to do that, but I absolutely could see them doing it. And that's why I really do the Facebook thing as a redundancy, because I record myself doing this on Zoom to post on my locals and on my YouTube, but the Facebook is just another way to get it out there. But yeah, I could see them doing that. Anyway, so that's something I would expect that if George Stephanopoulos was responsible and a journalist, which he's not, would ask Joe Biden about at the town hall. Now, George Stephanopoulos is a Democratic operative, has been, he was, I think, Bill Clinton's communication director. He writes in his book about, crying with Hillary Clinton. So anyway, he's not going to ask Biden any tough questions. And so that's why I'll probably spend a little more time on the Trump one, although I will try to get some kind of live feed of the Biden town hall maybe following, so I can see if they do. Normally I would go to a Twitter feed for that, but to try to get some information from it. But really, I think what most people are looking for here is how's Donald Trump going to handle this? He's off from being, recovered from the coronavirus, I guess. They're doing this because he refused to do a virtual debate, which I actually think makes sense. I wouldn't either if I were him. And so people are looking to see if his demeanor is any different than it was in the first debate, which was awful. Go back and watch my video where I watched it and gave commentary. I thought it was really, really bad. He did horrible in that debate. But I think people are going to be looking for that. I think people are going to look for how he responds to questions. The problem with a lot of these town halls is they stack them with people who, it's not some randos off the street. For example, they did that Biden town hall that Anderson Cooper moderated. There was a person who was supposedly a undecided voter or something like that. And it turned out that this is a guy who's done multiple interviews and has his own podcast about why he's a Democrat and hates Republicans. And so they do stack these town hall audiences. That's not me going tinfoil hat here. I'm just saying that does happen. And so, like, whenever, another example, a long time ago, whenever Bernie did that Fox News town hall, right? Which, good for him. He got a lot of crap for doing that. But they stacked it with Bernie Sanders supporters, and they were fairly open about it. So I'm wondering, what type of questions Biden will get compared to what Trump will get. I think if Trump is able to, here's what I will say he ought to do, and then I'll just be very candid and say I don't expect him to do it. If he showed some humility, Chris Christie was just released from the hospital, and he's expressed a lot of humility from being in the ICU for coronavirus. I think if Trump showed some humility and, was able to deal with difficult questions from people in the audience without looking like an ass, I think that would go pretty well for him. I think the problem is most people, he really got a mulligan with the coronavirus. I think people wouldn't be watching this if it weren't for the coronavirus stuff. Here's another thing that's kind of interesting before this thing gets started. The guy who was originally supposed to moderate the debate tonight, there was this controversy where he had sent a tweet out where he was asking Scaramucci for some advice. Scaramucci is, of course, a huge critic of Donald Trump's, and he was asking him for some advice on how to deal with something, and he said his account got hacked. The problem is that he's clearly in contact and communicating with people that are very strong critics of Donald Trump, and he's looking to them for, what should he do in some of these situations, and he said he got hacked. This is a guy who's going to be moderating the debate tonight, and then it just came out today that he didn't, and they found out, and C-SPAN has since they've, I think, put him on some type of leave, or I don't know if they fired him, but he's on suspension because he was working with Democrats, even though he's going to be moderating the debate tonight. Obviously, he's not, because we're not having a debate, but I think that's pretty fascinating too. These are all things that if, the president, actually prepared for stuff, he could talk about in a measured way, but he probably won't. But I think if he did that, because people are going to be watching and because they're going to be looking for, they want to see how's he doing after COVID. They're going to be tuning in. Not as many, right now I'm looking. So people are waiting. There are 65,000 waiting for the Trump one, and there is 90,000, I think. Yeah, 90,000 for the Biden one. Now, what's interesting, again, I don't want to be super tinfoil hatty here, but the Biden one, the live stream started 30 minutes before the Trump one, right? So if you're waiting for them to start, you're going to start watching the one that starts sooner. So ABC's live stream began at about an hour ago, and they just did news, whereas the NBC one started 30 minutes ago. So I think that's probably part of the reason why. But my guess, and here's a prediction I will make, is that you'll see people move over from the Biden one to the Trump one as it gets started, I suspect. But either way, that's, we got about 160,000 people tuning in right now. Okay, it looks like it's getting started. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute this, see what we got. We got Savannah Guthrie is the one doing.
This is an NBC News special presentation of Today with Savannah Guthrie.
Tonight, Donald Trump in the arena, his first primetime network appearance since falling ill with coronavirus.
I'm feeling great. I don't know about you. How's everyone feeling?
With tonight's debate canceled, the president faces our questions live.
I think this is going to be one where Biden is going to be looking for cues on if he even needs to do the third debate. So if the president does okay here, then I think he'll do the third debate. I think if the president does poorly or Biden does decent, I bet you that he'll try to get out of the third debate. We'll see.
My goal is to fight for you and fight for your family.
From NBC News, Decision 2020, President Trump Town Hall. Live from the Perez Art Museum in Miami, here's Savannah Guthrie.
Hi, everybody, and good evening. It's good to have you with us, and welcome to Miami and our town hall with President Donald Trump. And we want to say right off the top, this is not how things were supposed to go tonight. This was supposed to be a town hall debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But after the president contracted COVID, the debate commission announced it would have to be a virtual debate because of health concerns. The president then said he would not participate in a virtual debate. At that point,
I wouldn't do the virtual debate either because there's too much room for shenaniganery.
His own town hall with the same venue, format, and time as NBC's town hall with Joe Biden last week. So the two candidates go head-to-head tonight, though not face-to-face, each in a key battleground state. And tonight, the president will be taking questions from voters here in Miami, who we should mention are socially distanced and they're wearing masks. And I should say, this audience looks a bit like America. It's divided. Some here voted for the president in 2016 and plan to again. Some support Joe Biden, and some say they are truly undecided. We're going to get a mix of questions on a range of topics, and we're going to get to those questions in a moment. But first, with all of that ado, welcome, Mr. President, and thank you for being here.
That was very well stated, I have to say. Good job.
Thank you. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're well. We send our best to the First Lady and to Barron.
Thank you.
Do you have any remaining symptoms from COVID?
Nothing whatsoever. I'm great. I feel good. I was in North Carolina today and did a big rally. We had tremendous turnout, and just feel really good. Florida, Pennsylvania, we're all over the place. It's been great.
You received some treatments that are generally reserved for those with the most severe form of the disease.
Yeah.
How severe were your symptoms? In particular, did you have pneumonia?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel strong. I had a little bit of a temperature. The doctors at the White House are fantastic, as you can imagine, and they really didn't want to take a chance. And they said, let's go to the hospital. I said, that's okay. I'm going to, respond to what you say. And we went over to Walter Reed, where you have tremendous professionals. They gave me Regeneron and Remdesivir.
Right now, Biden's answering questions about COVID.
All I know is I felt good. The following day, I felt really good.
Did the doctors ever tell you that they saw pneumonia on your lung scans?
No, but they said the lungs are, a little bit different, a little bit perhaps infected. And
infected with?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't do too much asking. I really felt good. I didn't have much of a problem with the lungs. I did have a little bit of a temperature. Obviously, I felt there was something missing, and then I tested, I tested positive.
Well, let's talk about testing, because there's a little bit of confusion about this, and I think we can clear it up.
Yeah, and there shouldn't.
Your first positive test was Thursday, October 1st, okay? When was your last negative test? When did you last remember having a negative test?
Well, I test quite a bit, and I can tell you that before the debate, which I thought it was a very good debate, and I felt fantastically. I had no problem before.
Did you test the day of the debate?
I don't know. I don't even remember. I test all the time. But I can tell you this. After the debate...
Why wouldn't Trump know the answer to this question on whether or not he tested the day of the
evening,
debate?
maybe even late Thursday evening, I tested positive. That's when I first found out about
Back to the debate, because the debate commission's rules, it was the honor system, would be that you would come with a negative test. You say you don't know if you got a test on the day of the debate?
I had no problem. Again, the doctors do it. I don't ask them. I test all the time, and they...
Did you take a test, though, on the day of the debate?
If you ask the doctor, they'll give you a perfect answer.
Yeah.
But they take a test, and I leave, and I go about my business.
Did you take a test on the day of the debate, I guess, is the bottom line?
I probably did, and I took a test the day before and the day before, and I was always in great shape. And I was in great shape for the debate, and it was only after the debate, like a period of time
He needs to have these answers down. That's kind of bonkers.
I said, that's interesting.
Biden's doing the thing right now in his...
Just to button it up, do you take a test every single day?
No, but I take a lot of tests.
Okay, and you don't know if you took a test the day of the debate?
Possibly I did, possibly I didn't. But the doctor is very accurate information, and it's not only...
Why would Trump not have... Okay. Anyway, Biden's doing the thing right now in the town hall where he's saying that the administration knew in January and February how deadly the coronavirus was. Of course, the WHO didn't even have that information at that time, so it's a nonsense thing, but Stephanopoulos won't give him any
Let's talk
pushback
about the
on it.
event that was held at the White House on the Saturday before you tested positive. Subsequent to that, 13 people connected to that event tested positive. There was an outdoor reception. You've seen the pictures. There was an indoor reception. People were not wearing masks. My question to you is, at this point in the pandemic, knowing what we know, shouldn't you have known better? Shouldn't the White House know better than to hold an event like that?
Well, they do a lot of testing in the White House. They test everybody, including me, but they test everybody. And something happened. But as far as the mask is concerned, I'm good with masks. I'm okay with masks. I tell people wear masks. But just the other day, they came out with a statement that 85% of the people that wear masks catch it. So, you know,
They
this
didn't
is
say
a
that.
very
I know that
tricky.
study.
Well,
That's
that's what I heard, and that's what I saw. And regardless, but everybody's tested, and they're tested often. And I also knew that, hey, I'm president. I have to see people. I can't be in a basement. I can't be in a room. I have to be out.
You can see
And
people
I
with a
also
mask,
know-
though, right?
I can, but people with masks are catching it all the time. I mean, if you look at the governor of Virginia, he was known for a mask. If you look at Tom Tillis, a great guy, he always had a mask, and they caught it.
Well, there are pictures of Tom Tillis actually with one of Judge Barrett's kids not wearing a mask. But, you know, Chris Christie, he was part of your debate prep.
Yeah.
He was, I believe, at that event. He came out tonight. He was sick, very sick. He was in the hospital for about a week.
I know
He
that.
came out tonight and said, I was wrong not to wear a mask.
Well, I mean, he has to say that. I think it's great. He's a friend of mine. He's a good guy. And wrong or not wrong, you have to understand, as president, I can't be locked in a room someplace for the next year and just stay and do nothing. And every time I go into a crowd, I was with the parents of our fallen heroes. These people are the most incredible people. And they came up to me, and they would hug me, and they would touch me. And I'm not going to not let them do it.
Now,
to be
there
honest
was an
with you.
event with the Gold Star
There was
families
exactly
the day
right.
after the Supreme
A
Court
Gold
event.
Star
I wonder
event with the
if
most
she's trying to get him
incredible
riled
people
up.
I've ever seen.
Well, no,
And
I'm not going to go
I
that
could've
route
chosen
because
not to talk
these
to him
questions
or
make
to keep
sense, but
everybody away.
you got to
And
wonder
you
when
know
they're going to
what?
get to some policy
And I
stuff.
don't think that's probably where it was caught, but maybe it
Well, I
was.
was going to say, you bring it up. You brought it up yourself. I mean, are you trying to suggest that? Do you believe a grieving military family gave you COVID?
No, I don't know where it came from.
Okay.
And you don't know where it came from, and the doctors
I thought
don't
it
know
came
where
from
it came from.
Hopex.
But as the president, I have to be out there. I also know.
Well, there's no one that says you can't be out there, but it's just about wearing masks and having, for example, your
But I know
rallies.
this.
Your rallies
As
don't
an
require
example,
masks.
No, I mean, let's see Kamala. She's got people now. People have it, and I'm not blaming her. I'm not saying, oh, she did a terrible thing. As president, I have to be out there. I can't be in a basement. I can't be locked in a very beautiful room someplace in the White House. And I want to see the Gold Star families, and I want to see everybody. And I also say to people all the time, it's risky doing it. It is risky doing
But
it.
as
It's
president,
risky seeing people.
you're right. You don't want to. You want to be a leader, but you also are a leader and a setter of an example. And if you're not wearing a mask when your administration is saying best practice right now is wear a mask, no, it's not foolproof.
But many
that
people
will-
are catching it. Many people are getting this disease that was sent to us by China, and it shouldn't have been allowed to happen. But many people are getting this, and I mean, nobody's being blamed. Everybody is working hard to get this thing out of our country, get it out of the world. Look at what's going on in Europe. Massive spikes. They've done a very good job, but now you take a look today at the UK, you take a look at Spain and France and Italy. There's tremendous spikes.
But our death rate is worse than, well, not Spain, but those
Well,
other
I
countries.
have things right here that will tell you exactly the opposite.
Me too.
So the UK is up 2,500%.
So they're going to do coronavirus stats, you know, link sharing. So someone in Biden's, you probably just saw me staring off in the distance like an idiot for a second. I was reading the closed captioning on a Biden question, and it said, someone asked him, hey, Senator Harris said she wouldn't take a vaccine if the president promoted it, but we all know that he's not the one coming up with the vaccine. Would you take it, and would you mandate that the entire country have to get that vaccine? That's kind of an interesting question for Joe Biden.
And we have the vaccines coming, and we have the therapies coming. And I'll tell you what, one thing, when I got it, I had a choice, do nothing or use some of the things that we're looking at, like in this case, Regeneron.
Yeah.
And Eli Lilly makes something that's supposed to be incredible. And I think that maybe I wouldn't be doing this discussion with you right now. We have therapies now and cures, maybe. You can use the word cure. But we have therapies that are absolutely incredible.
I want to pick up on something you just said. You said we're rounding the corner.
I believe we're rounding the corner.
Now, 10% of the country approximately
Biden
has
doesn't
had
look like he's
COVID.
giving an
That means
answer.
80, 90%,
because we're not likely to have a vaccine,
is still vulnerable.
Right.
There's been some talk, including from the White House lately, that perhaps it approves of what's called herd immunity. That's where you basically just let young people and everybody get sick. You try to protect the old people and those who are sick, and hopefully it gets up to a certain level, and now we're all immune.
Yeah.
So let's just be clear about it. It also means more deaths. Do you support herd immunity as a strategy? Essentially just let people get sick.
The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. We did the right thing. We were expected to lose 2,200,000 people and maybe more than that. We're at 210,000 people. One person is too much. It should have never happened because of China. It happened because of China. And you have to get that and understand that. But it shouldn't have happened. But we were expected to lose. If you look at the original charts from original doctors who are respected by everybody, 2,200,000
That 2 million figure, though, is if you literally did nothing. The 2 million figure is if you did absolutely nothing, it would be 2 million. The question is, should the deaths be better than 200,000 when relative to the rest of the world we have a worse death?
So Joe Biden wouldn't answer the question on whether or not he'd mandate a national vaccine use, which is pretty crazy.
Big case in Michigan because that governor has a lockdown where nobody but her husband can do anything. He can go boating and do whatever he wants, but nobody else can. The fact is we're winning all these cases because it's unconstitutional what they're doing. And I think they're doing it for political reasons. But the fact is the cure, you can't let this continue to go on with the lockdowns.
Well, most
and I
of the
believe
states,
that on November 4th, you're going to have a lot of these governors. Look at what's happening to New York. New York is a mess. They lost almost 40,000 people. They have a lockdown like you've never seen. Now they're open. It's like a ghost town.
Let's get
and Savannah, it's very important. People are leaving New York by the thousands. And you're going to have a hard time ever building it up again. So that cure, that so-called cure that you talk about, it can't be worse than the problem. The problem is a bad problem.
We've got more questions on COVID, so let's drop it for now. We were supposed to, as mentioned, be watching you on a debate stage right now. We're not doing that, so let's clear up a few things from the last one. You were asked point blank to denounce white supremacy. In the moment, you didn't. You asked some follow-up questions. Who specifically? A couple of days later, on a different show, you denounced white supremacy.
No,
my question to you is,
you've done this to
why
me and
does
everybody.
It seem like
I denounce white supremacy, okay?
You did 2 days
denounced
later.
white supremacy for years, but you always do it. You always start off with a question. You didn't ask Joe Biden whether or not he denounces Antifa. I watched him on the same basic show with Lester Holt, and he was asking questions like Biden was a child.
Well, so this is a little bit of a dodge.
Are you listening? I denounce white supremacy.
Okay.
What's your next question?
Do you feel, it feels sometimes you're hesitant to do so, like you wait a beat.
Here we go again.
Oh my God.
Every time. In fact, when people come, I'm sure they'll ask you the white supremacy question. I denounce white supremacy. Okay. And frankly, you want to know something? I denounce Antifa, and I denounce these people on the left that are burning down our cities that are run by Democrats who don't know what they're doing.
While we're denouncing, let me ask you about QAnon. It is this theory that Democrats are a satanic pedophile ring and that you are the savior of that. Now, can you just once and for all state that that is completely not true and that disavow QAnon in its entirety?
I know nothing about QAnon.
I just told you.
I know very little. You told me, but what you tell me doesn't necessarily make it fact. I hate to say that. I know nothing about it. I do know they are very much against pedophilia. They fight it very hard, but I know nothing about it.
They believe it is
If
a
you'd like
satanic
me
cult
to
run by the deep
study the
state.
subject, I'll tell you what I do know about. I know about Antifa, and I know about the radical left, and I know how violent they are and how vicious they are. And I know how they're burning down cities run by Democrats, not run by Republicans.
Republican Senator Ben Sass said, quote, QAnon is nuts, and real leaders call conspiracy theories conspiracy theories. Why not just say it's crazy and not true?
He may be right. I just don't know about QAnon.
You do know.
I don't know. No, I don't know. I don't know.
Let me ask you another thing.
Let's waste a whole show. You start off with white supremacy, I denounce it. You start off with something else. Let's go. Keep asking me these questions.
I do have one more in this vein.
Let me just tell you, what I do hear about it is they are very strongly against pedophilia. And I agree with that. I mean, I do agree with that, and I agree with it.
But there's not a satanic pedophile cult being run by.
I know nothing
You don't know
about
that? Okay.
No, I don't know
You
that.
just this
neither
week.
do you know that.
Okay, just this week you
Why aren't
retweeted.
you asking me about Antifa? Why aren't you asking me about the radical left?
Because you're
Why aren't
volunteering.
you asking Joe Biden questions about why doesn't he condemn Antifa? Why does he say it doesn't exist?
Because you're here before
Antifa,
me.
no, it's so cute. Antifa exists. They're vicious, they're violent, they kill people, and they're burning down our cities. And they happen to be radical left.
Just this week, you retweeted to your 87 million followers a conspiracy theory that Joe Biden orchestrated to have SEAL Team 6, the Navy SEAL Team 6, killed to cover up the fake death of bin Laden. Now, why would you send a lie like that to your followers? You retweeted
That was a retweet. That was an opinion of somebody, and that was a retweet. I'll put it out there. People can decide for themselves. I
You're
don't
the
take a
president.
position.
You're not like someone's crazy uncle who can just retweet whatever.
That was a retweet, and I do a lot of retweets. And frankly, because the media is so fake and so corrupt, if I didn't have social media, I don't call it Twitter, I call it social media, I wouldn't be able to get the word out. And the word is
false.
and you know what the word is? The word is very simple. We're building our country stronger and better than it's ever been before. And that's what's happening, and everybody knows it.
Okay, we got a bunch of questions for you.
We're winning in a lot of states.
Okay.
We're winning in a lot of states.
Let me ask, okay, I'm glad you brought up the election because I do want to ask about that. That's another kind of leftover item. A lot of people have asked you, will you accept a peaceful transfer of power? You have said repeatedly, the only way we lose this election is if it is rigged. Now, that is simply not true. The fact is either candidate can lose fair and square without ballot fraud. So will you accept the results of the election?
That's the way I want it to be. But when I see thousands of ballots, right, unsolicited ballots being given out by the millions, and thousands of them are dumped in dumpsters, and when you see ballots with the name Trump, military ballots from our great military, and they're dumped in garbage cans.
That is a handful. We could go all night, which we won't.
No,
but we could go all night, one by one, a single case, a single day. You're talking about 150 million
there
votes.
There were 50,000 ballots that turned up to the wrong address.
There is no evidence of widespread fraud.
Well, then he's not doing a very good job. All you have to do is pick up the papers every day. 50,000 in Ohio, the great state of Ohio. 50,000 in another location, I think North Carolina. 500,000 applications in Virginia. No, there's a tremendous problem. But let me just tell you, they talk about the peaceful transfer, right? They spied on my campaign and they got caught, and they spied heavily on my campaign, and they tried to take down a duly elected sitting president. And then they talk about, will you accept a peaceful transfer? And the answer is yes, I will. But I want it to be an honest election, and so does everybody else. When I see thousands of ballots dumped in a garbage can, and they happen to have my name on it, I'm not happy with that,
right? Those are cases. There is in fact no evidence of widespread fraud, and you were sowing doubt about our democracy.
How can you say that? You do read newspapers.
I do.
You do watch the news.
Yes,
I know you read the news, but you watch it.
I do.
Because every day they're talking about ballots that are corrupt.
So Scott Adams gives a really good point about the ballot stuff, and he says there is no evidence of widespread fraud is not in tension with the claim there is a lot of opportunity for fraud. We've never done this before, so of course there's no evidence of widespread fraud, because we've never done it before. So you can say there is no evidence of this because we haven't done it before, and also say there's a lot of opportunity for fraud. Those are not competing ideas.
Years fighting off these maniacs, and now it turns out everything's there, that they were the ones that dealt with Russia. And it's too bad. But peaceful transfer, I absolutely want that. But ideally, I don't want to transfer because I want to win.
Yes, and I think that your words will probably reassure some folks. Let's get to our first voter. We've got Jacqueline Lugo. Now, she is, I told you this audience is truly split between y'all. You are leaning Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as an independent. Jacqueline, what's your question for the president? And you hold the mic up close and take off your mic because it's hard to hear out here.
Good evening.
How are you?
Welcome to Miami.
Thank you very much. It's beautiful.
Mr. President, if you knew COVID-19, as you told Bob Woodward in February.
As what?
As you told Bob Woodward in February, was airborne and deadlier than the flu, why did you only put in place a travel ban from China and not put in place other measures mitigating the spread of COVID-19, potentially saving tens of thousands of...
Keep in mind, the WHO didn't even say it was airborne.
Joe Biden was 2 months behind me, and he called me xenophobic and racist and everything else because I put it in, and it turned out that I was 100% right. I also put it on Europe very early because I saw there was a lot of infection in Europe, and it's sort of an amazing question, and I appreciate the question and respect the question, but the news doesn't get out the right answer because I put on a travel ban far earlier than Dr. Fauci thought it was necessary, who I like, far earlier than the scientists. I was actually the only one that...
Also, be the type of person that doesn't just say stuff all the time, so you don't have to go back and go, yeah, I was just saying stuff. I didn't know it was airborne. No one knew it was airborne then.
When I put on the travel ban, I put it on in January, the end of January. When I put on the travel ban, Joe Biden...
Her question was, why didn't you do other things?
This is ridiculous. You don't do that. Well,
look at her
Dr.
face.
Fauci
She's
said I saved thousands and thousands of lives.
Did you?
I was early. I was extremely early when I put on the travel ban.
Can I ask you, did your national security advisor on January 28th in the Oval Office warn you that this would be the greatest national security risk of your administration? He didn't say it, or you don't remember?
I read it someplace. Maybe Woodward said it or something. But no, he did not say that. But I knew it was a big threat. At the same time, I don't want to panic this country. I don't want to go out and say everybody's going to die. Everybody's
Isn't there a middle ground? You don't have to mislead, but you can...
No, there's not a middle ground. You have to be safe, you have to be vigilant, and you have to be smart.
You're going to like this next couple of voters. It's a mom and a daughter.
Good.
Mom, Barbara, voted for you in 2016. She's leaning to vote for you again. Now, her daughter was too young to vote last time. She's going to vote for her first time in a presidential campaign, and she is leaning Biden. So imagine the dinner table at their house, okay? So, Barbara, why don't you go first and ask your question?
Bienvenido a Miami.
Thank you.
Mr. Trump, as a frontline ER doctor working through the coronavirus pandemic, I know firsthand, and I've seen that many hospitals throughout the United States are suffering financial hardships. These economic effects are trickling down to the frontline workers.
Right.
We are being
totally spaced
across
on
the country. Frontline workers are being fired, they're being furloughed, our salaries are being cut. And this is also happening in other economic sectors as well, including the travel industry and hospitality.
Right.
My question to you is, how are you going to get the United States back on track, both in terms of the economy and the pandemic?
So it's happening.
Here's
we just set a record, 11.4 million jobs. We are going to have a phenomenal third quarter, which will be announced on November 1st, just prior to the big November 3rd day, where I think you're going to see a red wave. But we're going to have a tremendous announcement, I believe. I mean, we're going to find out. But GDP is going through the roof. Jobs, real estate, houses, so many things are happening. So people were saying we were going to have a 42% unemployment. Look, this was a thing that came into our country, and it happened more than 100 years ago, and it happened now. They were talking about a 42% unemployment rate.
Who was talking about that? I heard 20%.
It just came out at 7.8% unemployment, and people can't even believe it. Our economy is going to be, next year, if we don't have somebody that raises taxes and quadruples taxes, which they want to do and kills everything, our economy is going to be phenomenal next year. We're going to have a phenomenal. And I'll tell you, Savannah, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country last year, including the state of Florida, where we are now, and Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, and Ohio, every place. We had the greatest economy we ever had. We had to close it down. We saved 2 million lives. We're opening it up. We have a V-shape, and it's coming back. It's coming back very fast. One other thing, we really helped the hospitals. We've sent billions and billions of dollars to the hospitals. In addition, hundreds of millions of masks and gowns, and we went into the ventilator business because this country was not equipped with ventilators. And I'm not blaming anybody for it, but we're now making thousands of ventilators.
Am I worthy of your vote? Can I earn your vote? And the answer is there's two things I think that I care, and I've demonstrated I care about my whole career. One is, in addition to dealing with a criminal justice system to make it fair and make it more decent, we have to be able to put black Americans in a position to be able to gain wealth, generate wealth. And so you look at what that entails. It entails everything from early education. That's why I'm supporting making sure that we entitle schools, as you know.
So this vote, it's a young black man, and he said, he asked Joe Biden, besides you ain't black, what else do you have to tell black Americans? Because Joe Biden once said, if you have a problem figuring out who you're going to vote for, you ain't black, which is, of course, racist and insane. So that's why I wanted to see what his answer was.
They're leaving the schools. They're not there. We're short about 1.5 million teachers, 1.25 million teachers. Number two, every 3-, 4-, and 5-year-old will go to school, not daycare, school. And with all the great universities, including one you've gone to, or went to, in fact, talks about in the last 8 years what's happened. What happens when you let them go to school, they make up rapidly whatever shortcoming they had in terms of their education prior to that. They have not heard as many words spoken, et cetera, et cetera. What happens is that the studies show that 58% will increase by 58% their chance of going all through 12 years of school and going through successfully. Right? We'll also provide for the ability to bring in social workers and school psychologists.
You can find, there's montages of super racist stuff Biden has said. Poor kids are just as smart as white kids, you know.
Poor, but in all schools. Because we learned that, for example, drug abuse doesn't cause mental illness. Mental illness causes drug abuse, the failure to get hold of people and deal with their anxieties. In addition to that, I provide for $70 billion for HBCUs, for them to be able to have the wherewithal to do what other universities can do, because they don't have the kind of foundational support they need. And so that would allow them, for example, like we did in our administration, the president allowed me to go down and we awarded a cybersecurity laboratory ability to compete for a cybersecurity laboratory. The federal government spends billions of dollars a year on universities because there are.
Hey, so do you actually disavow white supremacists? Okay, let's go back to COVID.
And so that school now will be able to produce young black women and men who are going to go into a field of the future that's burgeoning, cybersecurity, and that's what's going to help a great deal. In addition to that, if you're a young man about to graduate, or you graduated from school and you want to own your first home, or it's awful hard to get the money, and depending on the background, your economic background is, to get a down payment. So we're going to guarantee first-term home buyers a $15,000 down payment for first-term home buyers. In addition to that, what all the studies now show, and I've been arguing this for a long time, is young black entrepreneurs are just as successful as white entrepreneurs or anyone else given a shot. But you can't get the money. Where do you go to get the startup money? So
almost like they need opportunity zones in the inner city. I'm trying to think if anyone set up opportunity zones in the inner city recently.
In all the SBAs around the country, and the state SBAs, small business associations, and that generated $30 billion came off the sideline, because if you have a guarantee of $200,000 for your new startup enterprise, young entrepreneur, you're going to be able to attract, if it's government money as a guarantee, you'll be able to attract another $100,000. It generated $30 billion. Well, I'm changing that program, and I'll get this done without much trouble, I believe, in the Congress, from $1.5 billion to $30 billion to $30 billion. That'll take $300 billion off the sideline and grow, because and for example, if you, in fact, and I were the same age, and we split our differences, and we were the same age, and we went to the same builder to buy us each the same home, but my home was in a white neighborhood on one side of a highway, and yours is in a black neighborhood. Same exact home. Your home will start off being valued 29% less than my home. Yet your insurance for that home will be higher. You'll be taxed more for it. We've got to end this. That's what got me involved in politics in the first place, a thing called redlining. We can change so much, that we can do so much to change the circumstances to give people a real opportunity.
Cedric, did you hear what you needed?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, do you hear what you needed to hear?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot more if you want to. If you're going to hang around afterwards, I'll tell you more.
Okay.
Let's get
No, but I really mean it. It is the key. Look, this is the way every other. How do most, like my dad? He lost his job up in Scranton. And it took him 3 years to be able to move down to Delaware, to Claymont, Delaware, a little steel town, and send us home to our grandpop to live with him. We finally got back. We lived in apartments, became 6 and 8 housing. Much later it wasn't. It was just normal apartments. But it took him 5 years to be able to buy a home. Well, we bought a 3-bedroom home with 4 kids and a grandpop living with us, but it accumulated wealth. You build up wealth. That's how middle-class folks make it. They build up wealth. Then he was able to borrow a little against that to be able to help us get to school, those kinds of things. It's about accumulating wealth. And you're behind an 8 ball. The vast majority of people of color are behind an 8 ball. And it's the same way what's going on now with all this money that's been voted. What's happened? You go to the bank if you're a black businessman, and the president fired the only inspector general to oversee all this help coming from the Congress. And what happens? You go in and they say, do you have an account here? No. Do you have a credit card with this? No. Have you borrowed from us before? No. We bail these suckers out. They're not liable for any of the money, but they still won't lend it to you. We got to change that.
Who did the bailout?
It's about accumulating wealth.
2008. Want to get another question in here from Angelica Portaros? No, not at all. Garnet Valley, Pennsylvania.
Hi.
Republican who voted for President Trump last time.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Vice President Biden. Nice to meet you. What's your view on the crime bill that you wrote in 1994, which showed prejudice against minorities? Where do you stand today on that?
Well, first of all, things have changed drastically. That crime bill went and voted. The Black Caucus voted for it. Every black mayor supported it across the board. And the crime bill itself did not have mandatory sentences except for 2 things. It had 3 strikes and you're out, which I voted against in the crime bill, but it had a lot of other things in.
So I want to give a thought on Joe Biden, and then we'll get back to the Trump one. Joe Biden just did 2 things. This is really fascinating. So he started to give an answer. He was asked a question. He started to give an answer on data. And actually it seemed like he had it available. So that was good, right? Numbers. And George Stephanopoulos finally interrupts and he says, did you hear what you needed to hear? And you could see that the guy, the young black man who asked the question was like, yeah, I guess. And you could tell he was disappointed with the answer. Now, here's why Biden did good at the first debate, okay? Because even though his recall of data and facts is not very great, he's like any other person. If you watch these movies where someone loses their memory of who they are, they still know how to fight back. There's this movie with Liam Neeson called Unknown, and his intuition of how to read human behavior and human interactions is still there, and how to defend himself, it's still there. So Joe Biden is still just a human being, and he has a really good intuition with people. And the answer he just gave there was fantastic on the second part. So as soon as he intuited that the young man was disappointed with his answer, he said, stick around and I'll explain more to you. And the kid said, yeah, I'll do that. And Biden said, no, I mean it. I'm serious. Now, I don't know if that is actually going to happen, but then he went on to talk and he told a personal story about living with his grandpa, and he talked about redlining, and he gave an incredibly good human answer. So things like empathy and reading human body language and being able to respond when attacked are all things you don't really lose just because you're losing some like cognition and recall of information. And that's why Biden did so good in the first debate. All of his best moments in the first debate were him responding to Donald Trump, because you don't have to know different facts and figures in order to know how to defend yourself or know how to tell a person who is constantly interrupting to shut up. You don't need to have some huge baseline knowledge to do that. So what he did there is really good, and it does kind of go against that idea that he is, falling apart mentally and so on and so forth. I do think there is some of that there, but those things like empathy and human emotion, he still has that because everyone still has that. You know, that's not something you lose just because you don't have good basic recall skills.
Passed. Why not use your office to make the second stimulus payment a separate targeted emergency relief package to help Americans weather the pandemic?
We've actually passed 3 packages, and we're on our 4th, and I agree with him 100%. He should vote for me. The problem you have is Nancy Pelosi. She couldn't care less about the worker. She couldn't care less about our people, and we should have a stimulus. And I want
Blitzer did a good job taking Nancy Pelosi to task yesterday about why they're not voting on this stimulus put forth, $1.8 trillion, and she said no, which is absolutely fascinating.
She's in our way. She's not
Blitzer at the end there, he
said,
yeah, I see your constituents out on the street begging for money, you know, and he did a good job. He took her to task on it, which he should. But they're the ones holding this up.
Washington, but this has been a roller coaster. Back in early October, you one day tweeted, "No more negotiations until after Election Day. I'm walking away." Then I think the next couple of days you said maybe we can do something targeted. Then you said I want a big bill, but then Senate Republicans said no, we're not for that. So you're the big deal maker. How come this is so? You yourself have changed positions.
Did you ever hear of a word called negotiation? We're negotiating, okay?
But people's lives are hanging in the balance.
And you know who I'm negotiating against? Nancy Pelosi, because she doesn't want to give the money. We should have stimulus. This was not our people's fault. This was China's fault. And she's penalizing our people. I'm ready to sign a big, beautiful stimulus. You saw the other day, I say go big or go home, right?
I
want it to be big. I want it to be bold. I want the money to go directly.
Republicans with you, they're going to go big?
They'll go.
Big old number?
They'll go. They're going to be very
so far they have not said they would.
Because I haven't asked them to, because I can't
understand the irony after I just gave Blitzer
Nancy Pelosi and I, through my representatives or directly, I don't care, if we agree to something, the Republicans will agree to it.
Okay. Our next question comes from, this is interesting. She voted for Clinton in 2016, but recently changed her registration from Democrat to Independent. She says she's truly undecided. Her name's Becky Lightman. Hello, Becky. What's your question?
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you. So corporate tax rates are a hot button issue, and you have cut corporate tax rates, and your opponent Joe Biden is planning to raise them.
Right.
A lot of Americans think that corporations don't pay their share of taxes and want to see those tax rates increase. Right. What do you say to those Americans to maybe tell them why you want the corporate tax rate lower and why that helps them?
It's a great question. We've created more jobs than this country has ever created.
Watch
160 million
watch
jobs.
this be turned into a question about Trump's taxes, which makes sense, by the way. I mean, it's fair.
Companies are pouring into our nation because of the tax rate. And if Biden comes in and raises taxes on everybody, including middle income taxes, which he wants to do, you will blow this thing and you'll end up with a depression.
Biden's still answering a question about the crime bill, which is a good question also, by the way.
That's really good. The reason we're coming back so strong is because we built a very strong foundation. Companies are moving in. Car companies are moving into Michigan, into Ohio, into South Carolina and North Carolina just today. So what's happening is they're coming in because we reduced the taxes. Our taxes, our corporate taxes, were the highest in the world, and now they're among the lower taxes. They're not the lowest, but they're among the lowest. And what that means is jobs. But also, we're doing a very big, and we've done a very big middle-income tax package. So if we get in, we're going to do the middle-income tax package. But it's a great question. And if he comes along and raises rates, all those companies that are coming in, they will leave the U.S. so fast your head will spin. We can't let that happen.
On the subject of taxes, as you know, the New York Times has obtained, it says, years of your tax returns, among other things.
What a segue.
It says that you have debts of approximately $421 million that you have personally guaranteed and that will come due in the next 4 years. The question is, on behalf of voters, who do you owe $421 million to?
First of all, let me answer. What they did is illegal, number one. Also, the numbers are all wrong with the numbers they released. And just so you understand, when you have a lot of real estate, I have real estate, you know a lot of it, okay? Right down the road, Doral, big stuff, great stuff. I'm very when I decided to run, I'm very under-levered, fortunately, but I'm very under-levered. I have a very, very small percentage of debt compared, in fact, some of it I did as favors to institutions that wanted to loan me money. $400 million compared to the assets that I have, all of these great properties all over the world, and frankly, the Bank of America building in San Francisco. I don't love what's happening to San Francisco.
Well, do I hear you right? It sounds like you're saying $400 million isn't that much.
Biggest office buildings.
But are you confirming that yes, you do owe some $400 million?
What I'm saying is that it's a tiny percentage of my net worth.
That sounds like
you'll see that soon because we're doing things. You know, we've given, I think it's 108 or 112 pages of financial detail to elections, and you know we have to file as the president, as any politician, you have to file. Nobody ever looks at that. When they do, they see how incredible the company is, but more importantly, they see where this debt is. No, I don't owe Russia money. I don't owe. I owe a very, very small. It's called mortgages. People have a house. They put a mortgage.
Any foreign bank, any foreign entity?
Not that I know of, but I will probably, because it's so easy to solve. And if you'd like to do, I will let you know who I owe whatever small amount of money. I want to say two things. Number one, it's a very small amount of money. Number two, it's very straight. It's very, very straight. But it's a tiny percentage of the worth. Did you ever hear the expression under-levered?
Yeah.
I am extremely under-levered.
Here's the thing. You could clear this up tonight by just releasing your tax returns yourself.
What's funny about the thing with Trump's tax returns is that the real story should be, holy crap, there's nothing illegal here, right? People expected there to be a bunch of illegal stuff. The real story is, wow, they're actually tax compliant in every way we can find. But no, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the fact that someone who owns a ridiculous amount of property around the world has debt on that property because that's how mortgages work. That's what he just said. But the real story should be they're tax compliant.
Treat me very badly. But we're under audit. It's very routine in many ways, but we're under audit. They like to change the game, change the rules, do everything. You saw what they did with the Tea Party people. You saw what they did with the religious group.
But to be clear, there is no law or rule that prohibits you from releasing your tax returns.
Except common sense and intelligence and having lawyers that say, because I would love to release them, and as soon as we come to a conclusion, I will release them, and very gladly. But if you go to elections, and if you take a look, you'll see 112, I think it's 112. It talks about the income, which is rather massive. It talks about all of the properties. They have them listed. You can never learn more. But you know what happened? People went there. All the reporters went. There was like a feeding frenzy. This was originally when I filed it. And I filed it every year. I update it every year. My son is here. They run the company. I don't run the company.
It also says that you paid $750 in taxes in the year you were elected. Is that true or not?
That's a statutory number. It's a statutory.
But is that true?
I think it's a filing number. You pay $750. It's a filing or filing fee.
Most people here probably paid more.
No, I don't know. I can tell you this. If they have my tax returns, as you know, they have to go to jail. It's illegal. But their numbers were wrong. But let me tell you what else. I don't owe money to any of these sinister people. This has been going on for years now. Russia. It turned out.
I don't know why he doesn't say, I didn't take a paycheck during any year I've been in office, so of course I didn't pay any income tax because I didn't take any income.
When you look at vast properties like I have, and they're big and they're beautiful and they're well located, when you look at that, the amount of money, $400 million, is a peanut. It's extremely underlevered. And it's levered with normal banks. Not a big deal.
All right, let's take a break. We'll get more voter questions right after this.
All right, let's go back to Biden's. Oh, there it is now returning from the break. That's good. I think. Yep.
He shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate,
Supreme Court,
shall appoint judges of the Supreme Court and all other officers of the United States. From the Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Here again, George Stephanopoulos.
My wife brought me chicken.
And the Supreme Court is our next topic. The questioner, Nathan Osborne of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Democrat.
Hi, George, Mr. Vice President.
Hey, Nathan.
Our country's first Supreme Court gave its first rulings just 2 blocks from here, from 1791 to 1800, and it's become more polarized since then. Merrick Garland didn't get a hearing for all of 2016, and Amy Coney Barrett's being pushed through at the last minute, even though millions have already voted. So what do you think about ideas from people like Pete Buttigieg and others to put in place safeguards that will help ensure more long-term balance and stability? And what do you say to LGBTQ Americans and others who are very worried right now about erosions of their rights and our democracy as a whole?
Well, let me start the last point, work my way back. I think there's great reason to be concerned. I was on the road most of the time during these hearings, so I didn't hear many of them. I just got the recaps when I'd get in late at night. I've been going around the country, Florida, and anyway. And but my reading online, what the judge said was she didn't answer very many questions at all. And I don't even think she has laid out much of a judicial philosophy in terms of the basis upon which she thinks are there unenumerated rights in the Constitution and the rest. So, number one. So I think there's great reason to be concerned for the LGBT community, something I've fought very hard for a long time to make sure there's equality across the board. Number two, I think that also healthcare overall is very much in jeopardy as a consequence of the president's going to go directly after this election, directly to the Supreme Court within a month to try to get Obamacare wiped out after 10 million people have already lost their insurance from their employer and wants to take 20 million people out of the system as well, plus 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. So there's a lot at stake. I don't think it's appropriate. I think the Constitution implies, there's no provision in the Constitution. My problem is I made a mistake of teaching constitutional law for 21 years and the separation of powers. The Constitution implies that the way the people have a right to determine who's going to be on the court is how they vote for their senators and their presidents. We seek the advice and consent of the Senate and the
president's president for all 4 years, isn't he?
No, he is. But once an election begins, by implication, it is inconsistent with the constitutional principles, in my view. You get disagreement among scholars on this. But I believe it's inconsistent when millions of people already voted to put someone on the court. I think it should have been held until this election is over, see what the makeup of the Senate is going to be. If the president wins this election, he should be able to
How about that question of expanding the court? Here's what you said exactly 1 year ago tonight at a Democratic debate. You said, I would not get into court packing. I would not pack the court. That's not what you're saying now. Is the nomination of Judge Barrett reason enough to rethink your position?
What is the nomination? What I wanted to do, George, if I had answered the question directly, then all the focus would be on what's Biden going to do if he wins, instead of on, is it appropriate what is going on now?
Shouldn't it be?
And it should stay, this is the thing that the president loves to do, always take our eye off the ball. What's at stake? One of the things Pete has suggested is, and there's a number of constitutional scholars have suggested as well, that there are at least 4 or 5 options that are available to determine whether or not you can change the way in which the court lifetime appointment takes place, consistent, arguably, with the Constitution. I have not been a fan of court packing because I think it just generates what will happen. Whoever wins, it just keeps moving in a way that is inconsistent with what is going to be manageable.
So you're still not a fan?
Well, I'm not a fan. I didn't say it depends on how this turns out. Not how he wins, but how it's handled. But there's a number of things that are going to be coming up, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about other alternatives as well.
What does that mean, how it's handled? How will that determine whether you're for expanding?
For example, there's actually real live debate on the floor. If people are really going to be able to have a time to go through this, I don't know anybody who's gone on the floor and that's been a controversial justice in terms of fundamentally altering the makeup of the court that's gone through in a day kind of thing. I mean, it depends on how much they rush this. And you think about it, George. Here you got a lot of people not being able to pay their mortgage, not being able to put food on the table, not being able to keep their business open, not being able to do anything to deal with what's going on in terms of the economy as a consequence of COVID. And they have no time to deal with that but they have time to rush this through.
Well, right now, it looks like they're going to have a vote around Halloween. So if they vote on it before the election, you are open to expanding the court?
I'm open to considering what happens from that point on.
You know, you said so many times during the campaign, all through the course of your career, it's important to level with the American
but George,
people.
if I say, no matter what answer I gave you, if I say it, that's the headline tomorrow. It won't be about what's going on now, the improper way they're proceeding.
But don't voters have a right to know where you stand?
They do have a right to know where they stand. They'll have a right to know where I stand before they vote.
So you'll come out with a clear position before Election Day?
Yes, depending on how they handle this. But look, what you should do is you got to make sure you vote. And vote for a senator who, in fact, reflects your general view on constitutional interpretation. And vote for a president who is more in line with you. And if you oppose the position that I would not have appointed her, but if you oppose my position, vote for Trump. Vote for a Republican who shares that view. Wow. But that's your opportunity to get involved in lifetime appointments that presidents come and go. Justices stay and stay and stay.
We have a question from a Republican, Andrew Lewis. I guess a disaffected Republican. You cast a write-in vote for John Kasich in 2016. You're going to vote against President Trump this year?
And John's writing in for me, by the way.
I know that. Mr. Vice President.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Vice President, my father, Drew Lewis, served as Secretary of Transportation under President Ronald Reagan in his first term.
Oh, yeah. I'll be darned.
And some of his closest allies and friends were Democrats, including House Speaker Tip O'Neill and Senator Ted Kennedy. Sadly, today we have highly partisan and dysfunctional governance, and I believe President Trump is primarily responsible for creating this toxic environment. As president, how will you avoid the temptation to exact revenge and instead take the high road and attempt to restore bipartisan?
I don't
like to do this? Are you willing to do this? Because it's a tremendous burden. The answer is yes. She's unbelievably well qualified, but I never spoke to her about these various questions.
Let's get our next voter. She's leaning to you, Mr. President. She voted for you in 2016. She is a registered Republican. Her name is Mariah Green. Mariah, what's your question?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President. I'm honored to be with you here tonight, sir, so thank you. I'm a pro-life millennial, and my question for you today is, if Roe v. Wade is ultimately overturned in the future, what protections would be put in place or kept for where the mother's life is in jeopardy in relation to high-risk pregnancies?
Well, again, I'm not ruling on this, and Roe v. Wade is something that a lot of people would say, obviously, you're going to speak to somebody. I also, two other great justices, Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh, I never spoke to them about Roe v. Wade. I never spoke to them about election laws. I never spoke to them about anything. And I've done the right thing from a moral standpoint. I don't even know from a legal standpoint, but it was the right thing.
Don't say that, man.
I think, depending
I don't know
on
if
what
it is the right thing
happens
from a legal
with
standpoint.
Roe v. Wade, I think that perhaps it could get sent down to the states, and the states would decide. I also think perhaps nothing will happen. I have not talked to her about it. I think it would be inappropriate to talk to her about it. And some people would say you can talk to her about it. I just think it would be inappropriate.
But what is your preference? Because it agreed, that's not something you should talk to the judge about. But would you like to see Roe versus Wade overturned?
I would like to see a brilliant jurist, a brilliant person who has done this in great depth and has actually skirted this issue for a long time, make a decision. And that's why I chose her. I think that she's going to make a great decision. I did not tell her what decision to make, and I think it would be inappropriate to say right now, because I don't want to do anything to influence her. I want her to get approved, and then I want her to go by the law, and I know she's going to make a great decision for our country.
You running as a pro-life Republican, most pro-life Republicans would like to see Roe v. Wade overturned and abortion banned.
Many of them would.
What do
Perhaps
you think?
most of them would. I am telling you, I don't want to do anything to influence anything right now. I don't want to go out tomorrow and say, oh, he's trying to give her a signal, because I didn't speak to her about it. I've done the right thing in so doing.
Trump refuses to denounce QAnon.
You're going to find out perhaps, or you might not find out. I mean, it may never get there. it may never get there. We'll see what happens.
All right, we have another question. This is Cindy Velez. She is undecided. She says she's leaning to Biden, and she did vote for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as a Democrat. Hi, Cindy. What's your question?
Good evening, Savannah. Good evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
As the mother of a young male of color, I have raised him to respect authority, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also out of fear that he may face profiling or be considered a criminal. As an educator, I've also had similar conversations with my high school students. Mr. President, what will you and your administration do to better prepare our law enforcement officers to work in collaboration with the communities that they serve, and also to protect the lives of innocent Black and Latinos from police brutality and injustice?
Right. I fully understand the question, and I saw everything that you saw over the summer, and it was a terrible thing to watch. We were very strongly, we have a senator named Tim Scott from South Carolina. He came up with a bill that should have been approved. It was great. It was a bill that was strong in terms of law enforcement and strong in terms of enforcing the proper thing and doing the proper thing by law enforcement. And the Democrats just wouldn't go for it. They wouldn't go for it at all. And I don't know why, because it was a really great bill. But I do have to say this.
They filibustered.
And some people don't like it when I say it, but a lot of people agree. I have done more for the African American community than any president, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, historically Black colleges and universities. I got them funded. They were on a year-to-year basis. They could have been put out of business. As soon as our country had a little bad year, they would have said, I'm sorry, we're not going to fund you. I got them 10-year funding and financing, and more than they even asked for. I became very friendly with a lot of the heads. But we've done more, and of course, opportunity zones. But criminal justice reform, everybody said it could not be done. President Obama and Biden never even tried to do it. They never even tried. But I say that, and I say it often. I'll say it loud, and I'm very proud of it. And I have a great relationship because of what I've done with the African American community. I'm very proud of it.
Now, she's
Let's go to
Latino.
our next question. We have Paulette Dale. She leans slightly to Biden. She voted for Clinton in 2016. She's registered as a Republican. Paulette, what's your question?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
I have to say, you have a great smile.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, he does. You're so handsome when you smile. Okay. As the daughter of immigrants to the United States who fled Eastern Europe due to religious persecution, the United States immigration policies are very personal for me.
Right.
Surveys show that most Americans and the majority of Republicans support the Dreamers program. So my question for you, Mr. President, is if you are elected to a second term, do you expect to pursue your previous efforts to cut the DACA program?
Yeah.
Why or why not?
And the DACA is somewhat different than Dreamers. You understand that, and you understand it better than anybody probably in this room. Where do you come from, by the way, originally?
My grandparents were from Russia and Poland.
That's very good. Okay. So we are going to take care of DACA. We're going to take care of Dreamer. It's working right now. We're negotiating different aspects of immigration and immigration law. We've built now over 400 miles of border wall, southern border. Mexico's working very closely with us. We're the strongest border we've ever had. We want people to come into our country. They have to come in legally.
I think that there has to be a pathway of naturalization for them. I mean, there just has to be, but you have to do that with very strong border enforcement.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So that you're not going to run into people coming in here
There are under your administration
8.5, months pregnant and then giving birth, and then now they're here with the kid.
DACA recipients now have to renew every year as opposed to every 2 years. So in fact, the DACA program has been curtailed by your administration.
Well, what happened is because of the pandemic, much changed on the immigration front. Mexico is heavily infected, as you know, and we've made it very, very difficult to come in because of the pandemic and other reasons, and crime. But we have a very strong border right now, and we have to keep it that way. But we want people to come into our country, but they have to come in through a merit system, and they have to come in legally. And people are very, very happy with it. You haven't heard any complaints about that. But what happened is because of the pandemic, we have to be extra cautious.
You have been promising this immigration bill since, well, at least July, when you told my colleague on Telemundo it was coming, but nothing's come yet.
It's very happy. The fact is, we got rid of catch and release, which is a disaster. You know, you catch somebody, they could be a murderer, they could be a rapist, and we're supposed to release them into our country. These are the laws that I inherited. We ended that program. Now, I think you're going to see something very, very good. The whole immigration, if you look at what's going on, people used to pour into our country, and especially during the pandemic. I think I think even you, Savannah, will be very impressed.
Sir, we have about 30 seconds left. I think about people sitting out there tonight. There are some who love you. Some of them are sitting right around here, and some who will never vote for you. But there are people in the middle. There are people who aren't sure.
That's right.
There are people who want to know why they should give you a second chance and how you might improve in a second term. 30 seconds, what would you say to them?
Because I've done a great job. We had the strongest economy in the world. We closed it up. We are coming around the corner. The vaccines are coming out soon, and our economy is strong. We are at a level with jobs like we've never been before. We've rebuilt our military. We've rebuilt our borders. We had no borders. We had no nothing. We've rebuilt so much. We've given you the greatest tax cut in the history of our country, greatest regulation cut, equally as important. And we created new levels of jobs that nobody thought was possible. And next year is going to be better than ever before.
I got to leave it there. I got to wrap from the control room. Mr. President, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to the voters' questions. That concludes our town hall. We do want to thank the president again, as well as our audience.
Okay, so I guess it's over. I didn't expect it to only be an hour. Okay, quick thoughts off the top of my head. I'm going to go back and watch the Biden one. I'll watch both of them. And let me go to full screen here on Zoom. Okay. I'll go back and watch them. So at the very end there, what I noticed, and by the way, I was wrong. I thought that Biden's numbers were going to dip and people were going to go over to Trump's. That didn't happen. Biden at one point had about 400,000 people watching. Trump had about 200,000 people watching. So that's, that is telling to me, like I said, after the last debate, coronavirus stuff, I said, I really feel like the president in some ways was getting a mulligan in terms of people wanting to watch him, because I couldn't see a lot of people wanting to give him a second chance after COVID. I expected more people to watch that, at least, that's just 2 live streams I was comparing, so that those numbers might be different. But there's more people watching Biden, which is pretty interesting. But I'll watch them both. And as Sean and my locals in the live chat said, that was the type of performance that Trump needed to do during the first debate. And obviously I've talked at length about that, so I don't need to say anything else. I'm fascinated that he didn't bring anything up about the Hunter Biden story. That's really interesting. And I think it's interesting that neither of them got a question, as far as I could tell, about that, the thing that happened yesterday. That's a question that Biden should have been asked. That's a question Biden should have been asked. Maybe not Trump, but I could see him just, bowling through and saying something about it. But Biden should have been asked about that. He might have. I don't think he was asked about that. I couldn't see Stephanopoulos asking him about that. My general thoughts, as with previous stuff, is I'm just not sure there's a lot that moves the needle for President Trump. I think he gave some good answers there. Again, what's the news update I get from CNN, right? Did he condemn white supremacists? He said, yes, I condemn them, and I keep doing this over and over and over again. What's CNN say? Trump fails to condemn QAnon. They don't say for the 986th time the president condemned white supremacy. They just say, here's the thing he didn't do. And because a lot of people didn't watch this, this snuck up on me. I only did this so that I could do a video on it and release it tomorrow. But most people aren't going to watch it. They're going to catch the news snippets. They're going to catch the highlights tomorrow. And as a result, it's going to be this skewed bullcrap. One thing I will say is that if the president loses, which as of right now, I still think that he will, I think it's going to go down as the biggest misinformation campaign success in the history of, the United States at the very least, perhaps the world, because the way that, and what we saw, like I mentioned at the beginning of this about with the New York Post and Twitter, not, them blocking the URL to that story. What we've seen is 4 years of, and this is just regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump, you can have a lot of feelings, good, bad, everything in between. We've seen 4 years of no positive things being covered and only negative things, 2 years of Russia stuff with Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, the news, and then the stuff with COVID, the way that's been covered has been pretty dishonest. If he loses, it's going to be the biggest success of misinformation and disinformation, and that might be a distinction without a difference, but that I could possibly think of. And what worries me is that, and I've said this for a while, if you followed my content for a while, you'll know that, thinking back to about a year ago when I did some videos about the media, I said that a lot of them blame themselves in the media and tech for Donald Trump winning in 2016. And they've spent this time trying to make up for it, right? They've been trying to make up for it. And what worries me is that if he loses, they've just been throwing stuff at the wall in terms of strategy and misinformation and stuff. That if he loses, they will now have a plan. They'll have a template, right? So they'll be able to look at what happened and say, oh, we now have a template for how to defeat, someone we don't like. And we have all these things that include stuff in tech, that include stuff in Hollywood. I think I saw a news thing today, Hamilton's going to get together and do some type of fundraiser for Joe Biden, which, by the way, anyone that doesn't look at the way that Hollywood and all of our entertainment has rallied around, get out there and vote for Joe Biden. It's like, if you think that doesn't affect the rest of the stuff that they do in the entertainment industry, then you're out of your mind. People still don't make that connection quite often. But anyway, I worry that if he loses, they'll go, oh, now we have a template. Let's refine this and tweak this, and then we'll just use it going forward to prevent, hopefully any other person in opposition from ever gaining power or winning an election in the first place. The stuff with Twitter today and yesterday is really concerning. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But I think we're right now kind of seeing some things escalate and be accelerated. And then the stuff with tech and the mainstream media is one of them. What happens when Google starts to do this stuff too? What happens when Google starts to really, they already do manipulate stuff. I did a whole video about it. I don't know, maybe 4 months ago. But what happens when they really up the ante and they're just straight up censoring stuff? These are questions I don't have the answer to. But think about the video I did about us gaslighting each other. There really are, the main thing I'm thinking about now is the fact that there are two realities trying to compete that exist in a digital space that are trying to compete for the same physical space. So I can have all the crazy conspiracies I want online, and so can you. And so we can have all of our different realities that we can have flat earth and, or whatever, QAnon, whatever thing online. But the minute those competing realities are now competing for the same physical space, and that's what's, curriculum in academia, that is our government, that is, legislature. The minute they start competing for the same physical space, well, that's unsustainable. We can talk past each other all we want online with, your version of this and my version of that and your conspiracy theory and my conspiracy theory. But the minute those ideas try to compete for the same physical space where they cannot coexist, that's a problem. And that's where we're at right now, is we have competing versions and interpretations of reality that are fighting for the same physical space, whether it's in governance. I think, again, like I said, academia is one of the main ones where that's a big problem. I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is that the thumb is on the scale for some of these narratives that are a lot more harmful and toxic to our discourse. And a lot of it, to me, just feels like, this is kind of how we end in some ways if something doesn't change. I just don't see how our society as we know it is sustainable and could remain stable with this level of division and this, crazy disconnects in reality. I've heard Brett Weinstein and his wife Heather Hying talk about homeostasis. Homeostasis is the state where a living organism, it can live. It can live in a healthy way, where its life can be sustained. It can be sustained when it reaches homeostasis. And so an example would be if I were to go camping. One thing I've heard the way winter camping described is that if you go camping and it's below zero, everything's trying to kill you. Like immediately, everything, like the environment itself is trying to kill you because you can't live in below zero temperatures, and so you have to be fighting to stay alive. That's not homeostasis for me to just be at below zero temperatures. I have to do all these things to make up for that. Our body politic, our social fabric, has had all these things in place that kind of kept a homeostasis that allowed it to be sustained. And there are all these things happening right now that are throwing stasis way off, throwing the equilibrium way off. And because of that, it cannot be sustained. They're pulling all these things out, such as, a shared understanding of reality that allow homeostasis to exist. So we are not in a place socially and as a society where homeostasis is here. We're out of whack there. And I think a big part of that is the different reality lenses that both sides have, and that's where the tech comes in, putting the thumb on the scale for this one particular ideology. So that's pretty much it. That's all I can think of. I'm wondering if there's anything else I missed. I guess my fine point that I would say is I don't think this will do much for Trump because people didn't watch it. And so I think the way it's covered will be skewed. Biden didn't get held to any difficult questions. Now, here's what I will say. Again, I'm just processing this in real time for you guys. So sorry if it seems all over the place. But my guess is that he will do a third debate as a result of this. It didn't go so amazing for him that he doesn't have to, and it didn't go so bad for Trump that he doesn't have to. So I think he will do a third debate, and today's the 15th. I think the last debate was supposed to be scheduled for maybe a week or so before the election. I can't remember. It might have been 2 weeks. So it could be next week or the week after, but we're less than 3 weeks out from the election, so we'll see what happens. If I was going to grade their performances from what I saw, I would give Trump probably a B. He gave the right answers for a lot of stuff. He said, yeah, I commit to a peaceful transfer of power, but obviously there are some things that could happen here. Yeah, I denounce white supremacists. All right, what else you got? You want to do this for an hour? Are you serious? So I think he gave some good answers there. Biden's performance from what I saw is probably, the average of what you'd expect, C, somewhere in the C range, maybe C minus. I think the little bit that I saw, I need to go back and revise that after I watch it. The fact that it's only an hour helps tremendously. So yeah, I don't think it'll move the needle, but I do think that Biden won't be so comfortable that he'll refuse to do the third debate. I'm trying to figure out from my end how far off I am in terms of, because a lot of this to me feels like the election is pretty much in the bag. So if you watch the Chiefs game against the Raiders this past Sunday, the Chiefs made a lot of mistakes, and they're down by 16, I think it was, and there was like 6 minutes left, and I was already in the mindset of this is over, this is done. And then they scored a touchdown, and then they got the 2-point conversion, so they're down by 8, so they could still win, but it's a really long shot. But I was still in the mindset of they're probably not going to win, even though I guess they could if they did these kind of things right. And they didn't win. They didn't win, nor did they deserve to win after the way they played. My point is that the Chiefs could have won that game if a certain series of things happened, but I'd already kind of accepted the fact that they probably weren't going to win. That's kind of how I feel right now about this election, is that do I think there are things that could happen that would tip it in Trump's favor where he could win? Absolutely, I think there are. I would be so stupid to not think that there are things that could tilt this in Trump's favor. At the same time, do I think those things are likely, or do I even know what they are necessarily? You know, outside of something really crazy like Biden getting COVID, I think is something that would tilt it in Trump's favor. You know, some really crazy. I just don't know what else. You know, some big scandal. You know, but again, I'm not sure that even get covered, right? Because of what happened with this Hunter Biden laptop stuff. So I don't know. So I guess my point is I'm still trying to calibrate where I am in terms of just accepting his defeat as a foregone conclusion and trying to figure out, okay, what do we do next? Because I don't think change happens from the top down anyway. And figuring out what are the things that could happen, you know? So I'm just trying to allocate my mental real estate accordingly. So if you have any feedback on that or any thoughts, please drop them in the comments, drop them in, you know, in replies, send me a message, whatever, to let me know, because that's kind of where I'm at, where I would say, you know, it's like the Chiefs being down by 16 with 5 minutes left. You know, they're the Chiefs, so they can win, but will they? Probably not. Donald Trump's Donald Trump. I mean, he threaded the needle in 2016. So could he win? Of course. Do I think he will? Probably not. I was looking at the betting markets right now, and the betting markets are way, way, way in Biden's favor, as of at least maybe 4 days ago when I was checking. And I was texting Kevin about this, and I'm like, I don't know how to interpret these numbers. What do you think? But anyway, so I just don't know what I would be missing, you know, because I don't just want to go on polls. And there are certain polls that I look at where I don't just look at Trump versus Biden. I want to know, how do they feel about Trump this thing, Trump this thing, Trump this thing, Trump this thing. And, you know, is this really a referendum on Trump, which I think it will be. And again, I go back to, and I'll leave it here, that a lot of those things, whether it's COVID response, just perceptions on basically anything, I think that if he loses, right now the figure I have is 85-15. I think 15%, let's say he did what he needed to do in the last debate. The fact that he didn't, that falls in the 15% of where his loss would be on him. But I would say a solid 85% is on somewhere in there, is on the media, the legacy media, and the reality silos. And so that's where a lot of my attention is, because I think it's totally insane, and it's a real big problem. So, okay, I'll leave it there. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, think I'm an idiot, don't want me to eat chicken strips on a live stream again, please let me know. Follow me on Twitter, assuming Twitter still exists. I haven't checked, obviously, in the past hour. But that's at My Mundane Mind. Go to my locals community, returntoreason.locals.com, YouTube, Return to Reason. I started a Facebook group. I just got the shell of it there, and I'm going to start trying to do some more stuff with that as I get time. Return to Reason, of course, and then same with ThinkSpot and medium.com, Return to Reason as well. So I think that's it. So I suppose I will see you guys next time. I will for the next debate, and then I think I'm going to be doing some video on kind of how I'm going to be voting here in the next week or so. So you can be looking for that as well. Anyway, all right, that's it. I'm going to stop recording on Zoom. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.